In today's video, we are going to look at harmony. So there are 4 parts to understanding harmony in today's lesson. So we shall start with the first part, which is what is harmony? So what is harmony? First, what do you understand from the word harmony? When we are approaching a new topic, it's helpful to think where else might we have heard or seen this word and in what context. So just give a few seconds to think through what do you understand from this word or where else have you heard it? Right? Of course, you can go to the dictionary and check the definition, but if we just have the simple definition for what is harmony, harmony is when something or someone or a group of people work well together, right? So definition of harmony, something or someone who works well together. So there are 2 parts to the definition that we should take note of here. The first one is that first is works together, so that it is multiple parts coming together. And the second thing is not just coming together, is working well together as well. So that is the first part. What is harmony? Harmony is something or some group of people who work well together. So we go on to the second part of the lesson, which is what works well together. So when we are talking about what works well together, what are we referring to in music? So in music, when we talk about things working well together, one of the things that need to work well together are the notes and the chords that we choose. These are not new to us, so if you need to, you can go and review what are notes and chords in music. But these notes and chords should work well together. To summarize into one statement, in music, harmony is the notes and chords working well together so that it sounds nice. Of course, sounding nice can be relative and dependent on the listener, and different people may find different music sounds nice. But generally, harmony is the notes and chords working well together so that it sounds nice. So before we go on talking about the rest of harmony, it's important to talk about chords, and specifically we are going to look at chord notation. We have already learned about major and minor chords. In this specific example, we have C major and C minor. So we are going to look at the different ways that we can write it out to indicate that we are referring to a specific major or minor chord. So here you can see the first way is that we can write it out completely, C major and C minor. The next way that we can do it is this way. So for major, it's just uppercase C, and for minor, it's uppercase C with a lowercase m. All right, the lowercase m is to indicate that it is minor. And the third way that we can do it, the major is still the same, so uppercase C, and then for minor, we just have a lowercase c. So notice the difference between the second and the third one for the minor. And generally, for minor, the lowercase represents that it's talking about the minor chord. Right, let's look at another example. Here we have E major and E minor. So this is how it would look like. We can use a uppercase E for E major and a uppercase E and lowercase m for E minor. And then the last way would be an uppercase E for major and a lowercase e for minor. So here we have C sharp major and C sharp minor. Can you just think through the answers and maybe you can take a piece of paper and write it down or just answer in your head? What would the chord notation look like for this? And if you have something like this, then you are right. So these are the different ways that we can represent and write the notation for these major and minor chords. So we have just looked at the second part, what works well together. We have the definition. In music, harmony is the notes and chords working well together so that it sounds nice. And we have also looked at the chord notation and how we can write major and minor chords in different ways. Now we are going to move on to part 3. And in part 3, the question that we have here, so how does it work exactly? So we are going to look at that in this section. So think of music as a journey, right? As we listen to any sort of music, whatever genre we're talking about, we are going on a journey. So when we think of this journey, we can think of this example this way. We have this here, and this is our home. The home is one part, and the second part is anywhere that is not home, right? So very broadly, it can be split into these two categories, home and not home. So one of our journey may look like this. We start from home and then we go out and then we do different things. So we are not at home. So we're going around doing these different things and then we return home at the end of the song or at the end of the piece. Another way our journey may look like is that we may not start from home. So we are doing different things and we may take a little bit longer to go home. You can see that we have a few more things here, but in the end, ultimately, we return home as well. So if we compare these two journeys, one started from home and one did not start from home, but both in the end ended up at home. And that is important for us to take note of. And so from this idea that music is a journey and this example of home and not home, we learn one important principle. We said that harmony is that the notes and chords working well together. And within that, to understand that better, we look at this called chord functions, right? Each chord has a specific role or function within that. So from our example, the chord may either be the home or the chord may not be the home. So in the third part, we ask ourselves, how does this work? It works with this idea that music is a journey. Each chord has a function and it tells you that you are at home or you are not at home. And so with that, we go into the fourth section. The question now is, how do we know what works? So there are two important ideas that we need to know here. One is this thing called the key, and one is the scale. So the key first, you can think of it as like kind of like the group name, right? And what does it tell us? It tells us what groups of notes works well together, and that is the scale. And these notes can be used for the melody, and what chords work well together, and that is where we use the harmony. All right, let's look at this example here. So here we have three things. We need to know the key, and then after that we have the group name, the group of notes, and the chords. So for example, if we use C major again, the group name will be C major. All right, so we know that we are in the key of C major, and this key is telling us that, okay, this group of notes and these chords are going to be in this. So what is this group of notes? So once we know that it's C major, we know that we have these notes, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, right? And what chords do we have? We know the major and minor chords. So we have here, we've also learned the notation. So you can see this is C major, D minor, E minor, F major, G major, A minor, and the last one is slightly different. We haven't come across this before. It is actually a B diminished chord. But don't worry about that. That is a different kind of chord. We have learned major and minor chords, and we're going to focus on those two for now. So we have the group name, the group of notes, and the chords. Let's look at another example here, A major. So based on our previous example, we know the group name is the key, so that is A major. And what are the notes of the A major scale? We have this A, B, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, and G sharp. These are the notes inside the key of A major. And now let's look at the chords. So we have here A, B minor, C sharp minor, D major, E major, F sharp minor, and then G sharp diminished. Right, I just want to focus your attention on the chords. Right, we look at these two examples, C major and A major, and let's focus on the chords or the harmony. Right, so let's look at this up close. Do you notice a pattern between these two examples here? Some of you may have spotted this. You can see here that if we put this, the chord number on the first row, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then I've just put in the C major chords and the A major chords. And from here, you may see that you notice a pattern, and the colors are also helping you to see this pattern here. So you can see that the first chord for both C major and A major, chord number 1, is a major chord. And then for chord number 2 and 3 in that pink color is D minor and E minor for C major and B minor and C sharp minor for A major. So those chords are minor chords. And then we go on to chord number 4 and 5. And we can see that those two are also major chords for both C major and A major. And then we go on to chord 6. They're both minor chords. And then chord 7 in gray, both are diminished chords. So from here we see a pattern for the major key. Chord 1, chord 4, and chord 5 are major chords, and chord 2, chord 3, and chord 6 are minor chords. And then 7 is a diminished chord. And so this is true for any key that is in the major key, whether we have seen the example of C major and A major, or whether it's D major, E major, F major, G major, any of those major keys, the chord numbers will apply to those as well. And this is the same also for the minor key. So the minor key, there's some difference here. Chord 1 is a minor chord, chord 2 is a diminished chord, chord 3 is a major chord, chord 4 is a minor chord, chord 5, 6, and 7 are major chords. So let's just do a quick comparison between the major keys and the minor keys and the chords in the respective keys. How do we know what works? We need to know what is the key and the scale, and from there we can know what are the notes that belong to that key, and we can also know what are the chords that belong to that key. So now we are going to listen to an example and explore this idea of starting at home, going out, so we are not home, and then going home again at the end of the piece. So this song should be fairly familiar to most of us. Let's give it a listen. And so now we are going to listen to the same song again for the second time. This time, take note if there's any difference, and if there is, what is the difference and how does it feel different? And so some of you may have noticed a difference between these two times that I played this song. Of course, this song is familiar to all of us, but the main difference came towards the end of the song. The second time had a pause here before finally going back to the end. And so that was the idea when we paused on that note and that chord. Here we are not home yet, but somehow there is some tension and we want to go somewhere, and that place that we want to go to is the home. And only after we have reached home, the tension is resolved. So that is one example of the idea of starting from home, going out, we are not home anymore, and then coming back home towards the end.